write your name and sign in to the first or the second session. The first session is for the topics listed on the agenda. The second session is open for any comment. All right, thank you. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Lake George Board of Education meeting. If you can, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, nation, God, indivisible, liberty, justice for all. And may I ask everyone to participate in a moment of silence in recognition and reflection of the devastating Kentucky tornadoes and the loss suffering also from the school shooting in Michigan. We'll start with a moment of silence. Thank you. All right, we're going to open our meeting tonight with a presentation from Lynn Durway, our interim business manager. Thank you.
The presentations were created actually by Mike Varney a couple of years ago. Now, one of them is 69 slides long, so we're going to go through them rather quickly, but please stop me if you have any questions. I could take a whole semester to go through these. So the first one deals with budget. And as a reminder, our mission, vision, and goals and our action plan are what drives everything at the district. And some of the budget development goals are not only to support those, but to ensure long-term stability and provide a safe, innovative learning environment. The next slide. Yes. Actually, if you want transitions on, takes you through the budget process. And this is actually a year-round process, but the Audit and Finance Committee will begin in January by looking at portions of the budget, and the full board will look certain portions in February, followed by March and April. And then the budget vote is always the third Tuesday in May. So we're required to do 2 reports now that reflect either actual expenditures or budgeted expenditures. And this is to ensure that every student receives an equitable education. It's not as important in Lake George as it is in districts that have more than one school building for each grade level. So they want to ensure there's equity across their district. We monitor the budget throughout the year. Every month, the board receives a budget status report. The first column shows the original budget. Adjustments include budget transfers that are made during and carryover income. Then we come up with the adjusted budget. The expenditures to date are shown along with the encumbrances. Encumbrance is actually a purchase order that's issued but isn't paid yet. And when you deduct expenditures and encumbrances, you come up with the available balance for each budget line. So where does the money go? 76% goes for salary and benefits, and this is very typical of every school district in New York State. And then you see contractual services account for 16%, equipment, materials, supplies 4%, and our interfund transfers 4%. Where does the money come from? Well, in this district, because we're considered a wealthy district due to our property tax wealth, 86% comes from property taxes. The state share is 10%. I would say throughout the state, and certainly our area, with the exception of maybe Bolton Landing, their state share is closer to half or even 75% of their total budget. And then we have other sources and fund balance and reserves. This page shows you the state aid we receive. That's always a big factor. The executive budget usually comes out around January 1st, and we're always hopeful that the state will pass the budget by April 1st. This shows you some history of our property tax cap. So you can see that the actual increases were below the cap in every year in our history. And the next slide shows you, I think we skipped the tax levy. No, the next slide is the tax levy. Oh, one more. Thank you. So the tax levy is approved during August, once we know what the equalization rates are from the state, and once we know the taxable assessed values. And factoring in our total tax levy, we then come up with the tax rates for each of our 4 towns. So just to review, we need 60% of the votes cast to approve the budget in order to exceed the tax levy cap. But that's not the plan. We're going to, again, try to be within our tax cap. And if the budget is defeated, you could present either the same budget again or an amended budget. And then the second vote would occur in June. And if it goes down in June, then you have to adopt the same tax levy you adopt the previous year. This year we had a bus proposition, and we're going to have one in the coming year as well. We replaced 1 bus. Our buses are on a 10-year replacement schedule. We also auctioned off 3 of our buses. And that's the end of the budget presentation. Were there any questions? Janine, a chance to put up the next presentation. Okay, the second presentation. No. Thank you. So the second presentation deals with business office operations. And you can see that the business administrator has oversight of not only the business office, but also transportation, food service, and director of facilities. Within the business office, there are 3 other employees. The treasurer and the account clerk have both been here 13 years. We're very fortunate to have their experience. And the payroll clerk has been here a little under 3 months. And one of the great things about our staff is the account clerk and treasurer are cross-trained, so that when we lost our previous clerk, our payroll clerk, unexpectedly, they were able to jump in and help. So looking at fiscal management, we'll start with accounting. We are, go ahead. We are required to comply with the Uniform System of Accounts, and there's a guidebook that's put out by the state controller. We have to use the account codes they dictate, and the software that we use is WinCap software. Currently, I think there's only 2 software programs available in the state. The next slide breaks down an account code for you. There's actually a typo in the heading. It should say A2110-15001. The A signifies its general fund. 2110 is the instructional portion of the budget. 150 stands for instructional salaries. And then at the end, we have a 1 designating the high school. Of course, if it was the elementary school, we would have a 2. So this is one of the reports that we're required to do to prove that there is equity across the board. And the one that's filed for ESSA deals with actual expenditures. And the next one deals with budgeted expenditures. So the one for budgeted expenditures was due September 1st. The one we're working on for December 31st is the one that deals with actual. So at the end of each year, we go through some journal entries, making adjustments when we so-called close our books. And the auditor works with us on those entries. And what we're seeking is an unqualified opinion, meaning there were no concerns. And our auditor has said that our treasurer and our office staff is really the gold standard. So we're pleased about those recommendations. Okay, under budgeting, we talked about this in the last presentation, what our goals are. Going on to the next slide, you see some of the revenue challenges we face. Always state aid is a concern, a big unknown. The tax cap is, again, always a concern. With inflation now, I think it's 6.8% and a tax cap at 2%. It really becomes a juggling act to make that work. And then, of course, under expenditures, we're dealing with declining enrollment, still the pandemic, and major health insurance employee benefit increases, which are all out of our control. So again, here's the same budget calendar that you saw in the last presentation. And the next slide again shows you a copy of the budget status report with all of the columns. But now we move on to long-range planning. Debt service. This is for our bond payments and our band payments. When we purchase buses, we issue a band and pay for them over 5 years. We currently have 3 bond schedules that are outstanding. And if you take a look at these blue lines, and you'll see in 2027, there's a sharp decrease. That's when one of our bond issues will be completely paid off. So if we were to do long-term planning, the time to have new debt come on the books would be that same year. Bond anticipation notes, and those are what are used for the school buses. So we also do planning with our reserves. We have a number of reserves, and they each have their own requirements. This is an example. One of them is the teacher's retirement reserve, and this balance is outdated, but it can only be used for very specific purposes. So moving on to purchasing. This shows you our goals. And the next slide shows you that we have to comply not only with New York State law, but we're required to have a purchasing policy. And we look at that each and every year. Competitive bidding is required for all purchase contracts over $20,000. And things sometimes are lumped together. For instance, in the area of food service, if all canned goods for the year were over $20,000, we would have to bid those. And all public work contracts in excess of $35,000 have to be bid. So the next slide shows you what our own purchasing policy dictates. For instance, less than 2,000, no quotation is required. 2,000 to 5,000, we need to get 2 quotes, and 5,000 to 20,000, 3 informal quotations. And then, as I just mentioned, over 20,000, we would have to bid. And the same type of schedule we have for public works contracts. There are some exceptions to the bidding laws. Some of them that you might have heard of are state contracts. When we purchase our school buses, we generally purchase them on state contracts, so it really saves a lot of time and expense for not having to bid them. Also, we do some cooperative purchasing, emergencies, professional services. Professional services, we would do what's called a request for a proposal. And then you're allowed to consider other items in addition to the total cost. So this explains the process from start to finish, beginning with when a requisition is created and ending with payment. And you'll see all the different people listed on the right that are involved in the process. This warrant report on the next slide is included each month with the treasurer's report. So every time we do a warrant, not only are we paying for perhaps general fund items, but we could have other funds mixed in with those payments, and they're all recorded separately. Moving on to state aid. Every summer, we're required to file state aid reports. They're due by September 1st, and we really can't finalize them until after our own audit occurs so that our ending balances are confirmed by the auditor. But each one of these blue titles represents a report that we have to file. And the next page is just a screenshot where we enter those figures on the reports within the State Education Department's online portal. The following slide shows you the foundation aid formula, and this is really oversimplified. Basically, it's based on our attendance and our wealth factor. And as I mentioned, we are considered property wealthy, so that's why our aid is as low as it is. At one time, I heard there were 52 different state aid formulas. I don't know if that's still true, but this slide represents just one of them. One of the other systems that we use is the STACK system, and we work very closely with the Special Education Department. We have to report costs for all students, whether they're all special ed students, whether they're in public placements, private, attend summer school or 12-month education, and also homeless students. And the next slide is a snapshot, a screenshot of what their portal looks like. Again, here's a list of our state aid payments. You see we have the general purpose aids. I hit on the foundation aid. It also includes high tax aid. And then we have expense-based aids. In other words, the reimbursement depends on what you spend in those categories. I'll use building aid as an example. Our building aid ratio is 10%. So on all our approved cost for those building projects, we would be reimbursed 10% over a certain number of years. Again, the formulas are applied to come up with those figures. So the next area we'll take a look at are property taxes. And this is a timeline that shows you the calculation. Begins when the voters approve the budget and we know what the tax levy is going to be. And then it ends, or almost ends, with the end of the tax collection period. Tonight on your agenda, you have the tax reconciliation report because the tax season ended last month. The unpaid taxes are going to be returned to the county, or they have already been. And then they're required by law to reimburse us April 1st, along with penalty and interest. So it's up to them to go after anybody that hasn't paid at that point. This slide shows you the tax cap formula, and Mike made some projections going forward, what the tax cap would be. And it also shows you on the bottom line what the actual levy was the last 2 years. We'll have more about this as we go through the budget process. And the tax warrant, again, these are the tax rates the board approves in August. After the tax bills are printed, we have the figures we need to submit for STAR reimbursement. And after those forms are submitted, payment comes to us in January. And this is that, on the next slide, the tax reconciliation report you'll be looking at tonight. Going on to cash management. This slide lists all our bank accounts, and you see the majority of our accounts are in Glens Falls National Bank. We also have accounts with New York Class and NILAV, and both of them are local government investment pools where multiple districts and municipalities have pooled their money together in hopes of getting a better rate of return, which right now just isn't happening because of the Fed funds rates. But we still have those accounts. Most of them are at a zero balance. Grant administration. We have ESSA grants, and you'll see we have Title 1, 2, and 4, and IDEA grants, Section 611 and 619, which are for special education. The next slide shows you all of the forms we're required to do for the ESSA grants and all of the information we have to put into SED's portal. The next slide shows you the same things for the IDEA grants. Next, we'll look at capital projects. The business office is responsible for overall coordination of the projects, and you know the projects usually always start with community involvement. An architect, a construction manager, a fiscal advisor, our own attorney, and then bond counsel that takes us through the bond sale. Human resources. Payroll. The next slide shows you the payroll processing cycle. There's a lot of input involved, a lot of tracking involved. Not going to go through it all. And the following shows you some of the reports the payroll clerk is responsible for. Some have to be done every payroll, which is every other week. Some have to be done monthly, some quarterly, and some annually. And then we're also under the requirements of the Civil Service Administration, Warren County Civil Service. And our employees are either unclassified or classified. Unclassified would be primarily your teaching staff, your administrators, your TAs. Classified is divided into the 4 classes you see here. Competitive. I'll use an example for custodian to be appointed. They have to take an exam and be reachable on the list. You have a non-competitive class, which would be a cleaner, where they're not required to take an exam. You also have a labor class. I believe bus drivers are members of the labor class, and you have an exempt class. An example of someone in the exempt class would be our treasurer. Some of the other benefits that have to be administered, I think back up one. Oops. Oh, I'm sorry. Health insurance, as everyone knows, we're members of our BOCES consortium. So for active members, they have to select among the plans offered in accordance with their contracts. And the next slide shows you retirees. Not only are they selecting a plan, they're dealing with Medicare, supplemental plans, drug subsidies we have to work on, and they also require a lot of support from us. Most of them, not all. Other benefits that we have to administer, tax sheltered annuities, FMLA, dental, flex plan, the Coronavirus Response Act, New York State Deferred Comp. Now, talking about employee training. I actually wasn't here for the beginning of COVID, so I don't know what type of training was required there. But every year we have to do the right to know training, and then sexual harassment training is provided as well. Negotiations. This year, you can see that we're going to be negotiating with teachers as well as administrators. The Staff Association contract that was adopted is good for 5 years. And after this year, CSEA will be up in 2025. Operations, buildings and grounds. I'm very fortunate, the district is very fortunate, because each of these support areas, we're going to look at buildings and grounds, food service, and transportation. We have experienced directors, and they really require very little supervision or input. They do a fantastic job. So you can see some of the issues the business office is involved in each of those areas. But again, it's very minimal. Concludes my presentation. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Lynn, thank you so much. And it is so much, it's so much to take in. And we really appreciate your expertise, your leadership, the experience that you bring to the district. We're very pleased that you're here. Thank you
very much.
Okay, next up, we have Mr. Conway with the elementary update.
There we go. So Merry Christmas, a happy holiday season to all of the board members. Also want to give a quick update regarding COVID, our numbers. They continue to stay low, which is a great thing, and that's not by accident. So I definitely want to publicly thank our parents for being vigilant. If kids are sick, they don't come to school, and our parents are great about that. And then to our staff for following protocols. It's getting old. This is difficult to continue to do, but our staff is really working hard, and our students, to make sure that we're distancing, hand washing, sanitizing, all of that to make sure that we're all in school. So, and certainly I would be remiss without mentioning Faith Helms, our nurse. She's absolutely amazing, as is Carrie Becker here at the junior senior high. They do tremendous work. But so the numbers. Out of about 370 staff and students right now, we currently have one person in our building out due to a positive case of COVID. So that's 0.3%. That's a good thing. And we have 5 people that are quarantining due to contact outside of school. So that's about 1%. So our numbers are really good, and we're going to continue to keep working hard to make sure everybody's in school so that we can enjoy exciting things like Thursday night, our elementary school winter concert. And we're having it this year in the junior senior high gym. That's something new. Our music teachers aren't really excited about that. That's not the venue you want to be in. But we're excited that we're having a concert. And certainly we can fit everyone in the gym. So I wanted to let you know, 7 o'clock, and it's featuring our 3rd and 4th grade chorus, 5th and 6th grade band, and 5th and 6th grade chorus. And I mentioned who's performing because I looked at the numbers today. So there's 186 kids in 3rd through 6th grade. Out of those students, 66% of the kids, 123 kids, are either in our band or chorus. It's amazing. And you know, that's a credit to the work that Mallory Meyer and Ken Schenk do in getting kids excited about music. Ken in the general music program, and then Mallory getting them excited about instrumental. One of the things we also do to make sure that kids know what opportunities exist is we make sure that they watch our dress rehearsal, and we're going to do that again. We've figured out a way to get our kids here safely to the junior senior high, and we're going to continue with that tradition that we didn't get an opportunity to do last year. So Thursday morning, we'll have everyone here for that dress rehearsal. And thank you to Mr. Kokoza for allowing us to invade the gym. I know that there were some shifts that were made in practices and maybe happen. Finally, just an update. I keep you posted on some of the work of our students, and today night I'm going to talk about our fourth grade student lighthouse team. So kids do this brainstorming and they come up with ways that they want to make their school better, and they have voice in doing that. And again, they do the work. They have to figure it out. So here's where they landed. They're going to, and I say they're going to because it will happen. I don't know how, but it will happen. They're creating a mindfulness club. They're going to get at least 2 benches. They're getting out on our playground. They're calling them friendship benches. A couple girls are working on that project. They're going to get themed lunches and different ice cream choices in the cafeteria. And any group that completes their task plans to work on hosting an outdoor movie of some sort. So pretty exciting when you think about it. They're 9. They're 9 years old. They may be coming to the Board of Education or Buildings and Grounds meetings to share, to ask for support in some manner, go to PTSO, all of those things. And I will keep you posted because our 5th and 6th grade Lighthouse team, they're about to firm up what they're doing. And it's usually some pretty grand scale ideas. So I share that with you. And if there are any questions, that's my report.
Thank you. The elementary school is always so fun and festive this time of year. Will you be hosting your sing-along?
We are having the sing-along. So it's Friday at 9 o'clock outdoors. I don't know if Santa's showing up. Last year, we had some interesting things going on outside with a gator being driven around and kids getting pulled on sleds and things maybe I shouldn't be telling you about, but it was a fun day, and we intend to do the same thing again. And God bless our bus drivers when we send them home, because they will be all very excited for their holiday to begin. But yeah, so come join us. We'll give you the mic if you'd like to join in.
Excellent.
Sure.
Thank you so much. Mr. Kokoza with the high school report, junior, senior high school report.
Thank you. Good evening. So just 3 very quick topics. One, to echo what Mr. Conway spoke about, the COVID update for the high school. The numbers are very similar. We have currently 3 students out in quarantine. 2 are a result of being COVID positive. 1 is in a preventative quarantine. And we have 3 staff members who are either in preventative quarantines or COVID positive. So our numbers are relatively low, similar to the elementary school. So we're doing very well. We did have a slight uptick after the Thanksgiving holiday, and it was, for a bit of time, a little concerning. However, the numbers have definitely come down. So we're going to take this opportunity to remind parents and families and students just to be very thoughtful over the holiday break, so that when we re-enter the buildings, we can continue with our track record of providing daily instruction in person, safe and effective every day. We've done so well. We really have as a school district. And it leads me into my second topic, which is what occurred this past weekend here at the high school with the musical and the play Mamma Mia. It truly was one of those special moments that differentiates our school from the rest of the schools, that we were able to not only put on a musical and a play, but not only put it on here in the high school, but also have an audience, a live audience, and pack the house and do it very safely. So a huge thank you to our parents and our students and our staff who made that occur, most especially to Mickey and Catherine and Amy and John for just putting on a tremendous performance. They start that process in August. So what occurred this past weekend was just a culmination of months and months and months of work. And finally, very pleased to announce that the New York State Public High School Athletic Association announced their fall 2021 Scholar Athlete teams. And Lake George High School is proud to say that all of our varsity fall teams have attained Scholar Athlete status. So what does that mean? Well, that means that 75% or more of our team rosters in the fall varsity sports attained a 90% GPA or higher collectively for boys and girls soccer, football, volleyball, golf, and cross-country boys and girls running. It's a great accomplishment for our building and well represented across the board for all of our fall sport athletic teams to attain that GPA and higher. So congratulations to our coaches, to our student athletes, to our teachers, to our parents for that accomplishment. Job well done. And again, happy holidays. I want to echo that as well. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year 2022. Let's hope that 2022 is much different than 2021. So here we go. Thank you.
Very
Any
good.
questions?
Thank you,
I
Fran.
don't have any questions. I have a comment. I was fortunate enough to see Mamma Mia on Friday night, and it was amazing. And I am not a singer, but I was singing in my car on the way home. So I don't want a live mic on Friday for the sing-along, but I'll do more of a karaoke version. But it was uplifting. We had a live band. The kids were amazing, and they were having fun.
Yeah.
And it just felt like a great unifying time for everybody. It was
Agreed.
great, good stuff.
Agreed. With everything that we're doing, we always have to weigh the risk with the benefit. And I think Lake George Schools has found a very special balance with weighing that risk with the benefit of what occurred this past weekend.
I also attended on Saturday night, but I wanted to note how many students were involved in that production. It was very impressive, from doing the lights to sound to being the director and, all the different parts. Our music department is exceptional, from the elementary school right on through the high school. Really appreciate it. So if you could let them know, it would be nice. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have Dr. Huntley with the superintendent report.
Thank you. So Mamma Mia is going to get a lot of coverage and attention this evening. I mentioned it last night, and I'll mention it again, that my wife and I were so impressed by the production. We went Saturday night. We really didn't know what to expect. We hadn't seen a Lake George production or performance ever, so we didn't know what to expect. But I can tell you this, and I told the audience that we were with last night, we didn't know what to expect, but we did not expect that. It was so good. It was just incredible. We're still talking about it and will for quite some time, I'm sure. So Amy Baker happens to be in the audience. So Amy, why don't you take a bow? Come on, stand up. So I echo what Fran said in recognizing all the people that were involved, including you, Amy. It was just remarkable. So I also want to recognize both principals. It's really a joy working with both of these people, and all of the administrators, and Lynn. And I know that the work that they do is not taken for granted by the community or the board, but it's so impressive what you say. Every time I listen to these presentations, I'm impressed. Also, congratulations on the COVID piece. That's so important, and it does come from good practice. We know that there's no transmission that we're aware of in the school. Obviously, not a lot right now outside of the school. So, parents and community, keep it up. Keep it up. We want to keep these kids in school. I want to take just a moment to commend our community. We've had 5 community forums this fall. And that's a lot for a single community. And one community forum is a series of forums, actually, and that's the Code of Conduct. We have community members working on the Code of Conduct along with faculty and staff. So that's been ongoing. So I count that as one, but it's a community forum that's been taking place all fall. And the work that they're producing under the direction of Bonnie Hart and our 2 principals is just phenomenal. We've also had 2 community forums with the football merger that were very successful, leading to a recommendation that I'll make tonight for a merger, which is just remarkable. We had a community forum for the superintendent search that I thought was very successful. And last night we had the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Community Forum that also, in my opinion, was successful and garnered a great deal of conversation. So I'm mentioning this for two reasons. One, it's a commendation to Lake George Community Board of Education, the fact that everyone is working together in the best interest of students in this district. And the other reason is you're doing a superintendent search, and prospective superintendents pay attention to that kind of thing. You can bet that superintendents who are interested in this district are paying attention to those community forums and what's coming out of those. It's very important for a prospective superintendent to know that the community can be engaged in public school education. So that's certainly a feather in your cap. I'd like to comment just briefly, and we'll have another report on this a little bit later. This is in Janine's committee. In 2016, the district was involved in a building conditions survey. So I took a look at that building conditions survey when I first came on board. Every 5 years, a building conditions survey must be done on public school buildings in New York State. And the building conditions survey is conducted almost always by an architectural firm and the architectural firm's engineers. So it's a pretty thorough, not completely thorough, but pretty thorough survey of the condition of school buildings. I'm happy to say that our elementary school and high school received good marks. But as most people know, our bus garage, our transportation facility in 2016 really didn't receive great remarks from the building condition survey, and it's no surprise to anyone that 2021 building condition survey, which was just completed recently, we didn't receive great marks on that either. Anyone that walks through that facility would agree that there's work that needs to be done. And in fact, if anyone has an interest in touring that facility, I'd be glad to set that up at any time, including the public. So we've been working on the bus garage in terms of planning with the architectural firm, looking at options, looking at different approaches that we might be able to take, and ultimately trying to develop a plan to move forward with quality options for that facility. It really needs to be done. So we'll be back to you at a later point in time with more specific information about that. And finally, I'd like to mention the Native American image. The board asked me to provide a recommendation or comments about the Native American image. We know that public schools, colleges, and universities and professional teams began to look at Native American imagery and reassess their use, those entities that were using Native American imagery. They began to reassess their use of the Native American imagery decades ago. So it's nothing that's new to anybody. And then about 20 years ago, actually I think it was 2021, Commissioner Rick Mills, then Commissioner Rick Mills, sent a memorandum to all public schools in New York State, strongly encouraging them to discontinue the use of Native American imagery as mascots and that kind of thing. So for the past 20 years, various districts throughout the state have been dealing with that issue. And of course, Lake George has a Native American image as a mascot too. So my recommendation to the board at this point in time, considering current events, and some of those current events are very current, and let me just comment for a moment on that. We know that Commissioner Rosa has been looking very seriously at a school district in New York State, Cambridge being that school district, and has taken action toward that district that really, I would imagine, is unprecedented. I've been a superintendent for 30 years, and I don't remember recalling anything like that happening during those 30 years. So considering that the State Education Department, Commissioner Rose, is taking action against a single district, I think it would behoove us to pay attention to that for two reasons: to see what happens with that district, and also to see if there's any wider net that the commissioner is going to cast. And there's another current event that is happening relative to Native American imagery in New York State. The Assembly has a bill that's active that addresses Native American imagery, and State Senate also has a bill that is active in the legislature. I believe that both bills are in their infancy stages. But considering all of that, I think it would behoove us to keep an eye and pay attention to what's happening in those areas, and to pause here into the foreseeable future relative to dealing with that specific topic.
Thank you so much, Dr. Huntley. And I just want to extend great thanks for the partnership that you have with the board, and especially when you and I communicate and we talk about priorities. And I think we have a lot going on right now with our district, and we're keeping our eyes on the things that are most important. And so thank you for that. All right, next up, we have Katie Bruning with the Audit and Finance Committee report.
So the Audit and Finance Committee did not need to meet in November. However, the committee members each reviewed the treasurer's report and the claims audit report prior to these items being placed on the agenda. And there were no concerns with these items, and these items are C and D in the school business consent agenda for approval.
Thanks. Any questions? All right. Next up, we have Lynn King with the Board Development Committee report.
The Board Development Committee met, and it was quite a short meeting. It was a follow-up to our initial meeting with our interim superintendent, Dr. Huntley, to bring him up to speed on the trainings and workshops and retreats that this board has done. And I will say this board has done a tremendous amount of work to be sure that we're being an appropriate governance team. And I commend my fellow board members for all the work that they and the time that has been put in. So, so moving forward with an interim superintendent, as chair, I met with Dr. Huntley and we talked about what we thought would be a next move for our board to continue our governance training during this interim period of having an interim superintendent. And he was very thoughtful and has decided that we need to do something with making sure that we're looking down the road, and also, excuse me, we needed to look at declining enrollment is going to be a huge issue, and it's important that the board have a true understanding of the impact across the line for what that is going to entail. So with further talking, we decided to engage Steve Dana, who is an expert in both of those areas, and we are planning a retreat on January 6th. Board members already have that on our calendars, and we will be off-site at Ballard Road, and it will be a 2-hour time period. So thank you, Dr. Huntley, for your kind input, and that's my report.
Thanks. Next up,
Actually, I have
Oops.
a question.
Oh, go ahead.
So I'm just curious, was that the only date that, I'm just usually when we schedule retreat, I'm wondering if everybody had an opportunity to be there. Did he have scheduling?
Well, the biggest part was that we decided that we needed to try to plan it sooner than later. Because declining enrollment is going to impact budget process and how we're looking down the road at what district to look like. And then when we decided to engage Steve Dana, he is a working professional. So we were a bit limited, and we thought maybe if we gave the board enough notice, people could just get that on there was no intentionality and just date. That's what we came up with. So hopefully, I didn't hear back from anyone that they cannot make it.
No, I think I did let you know
That
that
you're gonna be in
that I will
Ann
not,
Arbor.
yeah, I will be away on that. And I would like to attend that, so I didn't know if there were any optional dates, if Steve Dana could do any other time, because I feel like I am part of the team and would like to participate. But I will not be here then,
Okay.
January 6th. Thank you.
Any other questions?
All right.
I know scheduling is so difficult, and Lynn, thank you for everything you've done, scheduling in the past. When I think about, I just think about how, like you said, how amazing our trainings have been. Thanks to you and putting us together with Dr. Brooks, et cetera. So if there is any way, I just feel like we have grown much because we've all been through all those trainings together, and I would, I just think it means a lot for us all there. I know it's so difficult, especially getting
Yeah.
speakers.
And I think one of the considerations of going earlier also is that we anticipate being more involved with interviews
Yes.
as we move on. So we want to make sure we're looking at that early January and see what we can work out together. Yeah. I want to give a nice welcome introduction to Janine Bieber. I believe this is her first ever committee report. Is it?
Yeah, well, thanks for mentioning.
We're here for you, Janine. We're here for you.
On that note, okay. So that Lynn's committee Grounds Committee had the exact opposite. We, on November 9th, had a very informative meeting. We actually had representatives from Tetra Tech, the architectural firm, come and do a presentation about many different things that are going on in terms of, or possibly going on in terms of current building projects, future concerns like the bus garage, et cetera. It was very informative. So I can give you some quick updates. Dr. Huntley spoke about the bus garage. Myself and Melissa got to do a tour of the bus garage with Dr. Huntley and with Jim and Fran also. And yeah, I was very, very surprised. Living in Lake George all these years, never, if somebody came up to me and said, "Oh, do you know what kind of shape your bus garage is in Lake George? It's horrible." I would have said, "You're crazy. No way, not in Lake George. Everything's top notch." And then the people who work in that bus garage are miracle workers. It's amazing what they do to get our kids back and forth safely. But boy, yeah, that facility is, anyway, okay.
Janine,
All right, so we'll go on. So that was one, so there was interesting discussion about that, and Tetra Tech was very helpful in brainstorming and trying to help with that. But we also touched upon the current building project, excuse me, and the work that remains to be done with that project, and also look toward planning for the future with the future HVAC project planning for both buildings, and that is continuing. The that's going to be also a major project that will be being looked into. But the HVAC, that project basically is being funded by federal stimulus funds. So that should be helpful. Another thing, Tetra Tech was very helpful also on providing information about energy programs that the district might be eligible for. That's a value-added service. They don't, it's done with no additional cost to the district. So they will be evaluating our school district for any programs that might be helpful. So very informative. Tetra Tech was very professional and
Thanks so much, Janine. Next up, we have Marianne McKenzie with our policy report.
So this evening, we have 4 policies moving over to second read and 5 policies moving to first read. One of them, you'll see there is the 3410, the Code of Conduct. That's one of the policies that requires annual board acknowledgement, and that it was like one little grammatical correction that was made, that was revised there. The other 4 policies came to us by way of Erie One BOCES updates. You notice the policy 1510 is there, which is, oh gosh, my class. Regular board meetings and rules, quorum, parliamentary procedure, and actually, and public comment. That should be in the title there. I guess that's a little typo. If you recall from last month, policy 1510 came to us from Erie One. They also gave the suggestion that if we had a separate policy on public comment, that we consider combining them. And so over the past month, we did that electronically. We reviewed it, and this is what we came up with. So it's present here for first read. Policy 6220, temporary personnel. That is, the revisions there reflect temporary amendments to the commissioner's regulations that are addressing teachers shortages that were made worse by the pandemic. And essentially the change in this policy right now is allows the district to hire substitute teachers who do not hold certification but do have high school diplomas or an equivalent. This is a temporary amendment measure. Policy 8240, instruction in certain subjects. That policy was revised to clarify that health education programs must include instruction related to the misuse and abuse of alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs. And 8210, safety conditions and prevention instruction, was revised to show the design to educate students, parents, teachers, and other school personnel about the prevention of child sexual exploitation and sexual abuse. And the revisions reflect that. So that is it for the policies that are up for first read. And I can now give you an update on our policy ad hoc committee for DEI policy. Since we got together last month, and in response to stakeholder feedback and reflection, we had originally planned to have work outside consultant for some support for our introductory session. After reflecting, we opted not to do that. As Dr. Huntley was talking about our community forums that we've had this fall that have been very successful, and observing that and reflecting on the feedback that we had received, at the end of the day, we felt it was in our best interest to begin this process just working internally with our community. And so we did that last night, and we got through it. And we had 37 attendees. And we had very good conversations, and we were able to, we talked about DEI, we talked about policy, and as of today, we have shared out with the members of the ad hoc committee who were present last evening an updated copy of the charge, and that's on the agenda tonight as well for your reference. 4 sample policies and a survey to complete. And so we're off and running with that, and just be received. The policy committee will be receiving that survey between and January 14th. That's my report. Any questions?
We're good. Well, thank you so much. And I want to thank Fran and Jim and Doug and Marianne for, thank you, and me, for flexing and shifting and demonstrating that ability to adapt to the changing needs and wants of our district. That kind of flexibility is so important, and I think we demonstrated on many different levels. And last night, I appreciated everybody's collaboration.
Tricia, thank you for saying that. And just like last night, my mind went blank while I was standing. Thank you for having my back there. Thank you, everybody, for being involved. Everybody who helped present, and for the community who engaged so heartily. It was really positive.
All right, next up, I'm going to give a report on our superintendent search. So focus on our superintendent search is strong and steady. We are on target with the timeline that we established and that preliminary structure that we've talked about. We have addressed the advertising approach. We have conducted the online survey. If you go onto the attachment here in the agenda, you can see are you putting it up? Okay. That you're putting it. So if you're interested, because I know we had some stakeholder questions about what came out of that survey, we're certainly not sharing any personal identifiable information, but there is a graph that shows the respondents and on some of those questions and things that are important for superintendent to have. And there's also a section that shows the affiliation with the district. So those who responded and their stakeholder status. And by far, we had respondents who were residents of the school district with children in the district. So we had a nice representation there. And we also had our community forum. So I want to thank everybody for getting involved with that. That went very well. I was on a screen. I heard a portion of it, but we did get some highlights out of that are being folded into our profile, which is not quite ready yet. But some of the things that we heard was that folks recognize the declining enrollment. We recognize that we're looking for experience, for objectivity, strong communication skills. Those are things that rose to the surface, in addition to having a long-term commitment. And one of the pieces that I found a great deal of satisfaction with was hearing the comments about what each individual there thought was their own personal and community responsibility to support a new leader to our district, to be welcoming, to give grace, to allow time to learn at the beginning and throughout the superintendent. Up next, we have a few more listening sessions with some internal stakeholders, and we need to finalize that profile. Then we'll be publishing that profile in early January, and we'll start with that interview process. So thank you all for the collaboration. I was thinking about all the different components that go into a superintendent search, and I was comparing it to doing a house remodel. or a kitchen remodel. You go into it with these great ideas. Oh yeah, we're going to do this. And you kind of have the end in mind, but then you never realize how many decisions along the way. And for those of you who have ever done that, generally it might be you and your spouse making those decisions. We have a whole team of people here who are coming to the table with ideas. So these are no small things that we're checking these boxes and staying on the timeline. So well done. All right.
Valuable. I'm just at, how the support that he gives us and the product that he helps us develop in terms of every step of the way. So we're so fortunate to have him, especially before he retires. Ooh.
He is. And I know that, some folks are concerned when there's somebody who is an outside stakeholder involved in the process, but I can speak to it very clearly that he is such a great synthesizer, but he doesn't insert his opinion. It's very much our own voice that is being elevated. So thank you for mentioning him. All right, well, so we're just about to be up to public comment period. So I wanted to say a couple things to begin with. One, I just wanted to offer a public apology to Chad York from last month because I think I was just getting fatigued at the end of the many public comments coming forward. And Chad, I just want to apologize because I did not respond to a question that you asked with the intention of getting back to you at another time. So to clarify, it is public comment time. It is not a public discussion time. And we're going to have a structure and a format because I know we have a number of people. And what ends up happening is sometimes that a couple people say a few things and then other people, it triggers in their mind that they want to say something too, possibly ask a question. We're going to stay with the structure of 3 minutes. And then we're going to ask you to do your entire public comment in your 3 minutes and sit down. If part of that posed a question and somebody at the table here has a quick answer to that question, they will check in with me at the end of that time once you've sat down to be able to make a clarification. But if there is no clarification and you have posed a question, we're going to do our very best to get back to you. That's one of the reasons why we have the sheet here. So let's see. And once again, we always stay respectful and kind to one another. And we ask that we're not talking about specific students or specific personnel items. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being present. Last night, it was one of the things I reflected on. I will take a spicy community conversation any day over apathy and non-participation. And Lake George has great participation and care for students. And these great reports that we're hearing, it shows in our kids. So first up, I would like to invite Linda Clark. Very good. Thanks, Linda. Chad York, you're next. Excellent. You're welcome. Amanda Doers.
Morning or afternoon, evening, wherever we're at. I've got too many kids and too many things going on. I just had a few questions in regards to the retreat. What is the consultant services for the retreat? What will be the business that's discussed for the retreat? And I didn't know, do you want me to just go down the line or wait for a response? Because I only have 3 minutes.
Go ahead down the line.
So that's first, just some questions about the retreat. Also, in regards to the building project and what we're discussing with the bus garage, which I understand, we have an old school here. But I sat next to Miss Myers a couple weeks ago, and just like Mr. Conway said, out of 122 students, over 60 are involved in the music program. She has nowhere to accommodate these students in that building. I mean, that's kind of sad. Like, we have a band room here, but at the Elm School, she's kind of in the gym or, wherever she can fit these students. So that, to me, I get the bus garage, I do, but those are buses and these are kids. And then in regards to the DEI, I was very impressed with Jim Dexter. I thought he did a very good job with BOCES. I also know that he also is a superintendent of BOCES, and he was able to successfully implement the DEI policies within house. He didn't have to use a consultant firm. So I'd like to see if we can continue to try to do that. I was on the Code of Conduct Committee. I thought it was a pretty cool process. I learned a lot reading policies and cross-referencing them and kind of cherry picking what we need and what we don't need. So I think it'd be cool to have the community involved in that, because the DEI is a blanket policy to kind of cover all the other 6 policies that we have in place. But I just wanted, and I'm speaking for myself, I don't like slippery slopes. And if we're going to put this policy in place and we're going to accept the federal money that's attached along with this policy, I just want to make sure that it's not going to go any further down the line. Like, we can keep it, tight. That's, I think, where I come from. I know we can't stand in the way and not have DEI implemented here. It's been obvious that that's what's taking place. But so that was one of my things that I wanted to talk to you about. Also, with the superintendent, are we trying to keep this in-house, or are we allowing like someone from out of the area? I wanted to know your thoughts on that too, because I kind of think, me again, I'm speaking for myself, but I just wanted to finish. But since 2 other people didn't speak, I think it's important to reach outside of our community and not have somebody inside. Okay,
Thank you very much.
Should I stand here? Will you?
You can go ahead and sit down. We have a comment period
Okay.
afterwards with the board, so we may be able to answer some
Okay.
of those questions. Thank you very much. And one clarifying point that I can make is that during board retreats, we do not cover business. All the business that we do that is of the district is in public. So we're doing development during retreats so that we're learning for ourselves the intricacies of the job. Yep.
Time and
Thanks.
so that everyone's aware.
Thanks. And I'll just say that, yes, that piece about the superintendent coming from outside, that having an objective view of the district was something that was noted. Yeah, thanks.
So we're going down the line, and we're not using a consulting agency anymore for the DEI implementation. We're in-house now.
All right. So next up, Rod Cornelius.
Christmas, and thank you for all the work you do here. I know I'm amongst good people. My concerns are going to be expressed briefly. I made a lot of comments yesterday about DEI. I am concerned that it doesn't end up in the classrooms. The comments that bothered me last night is that it would be groups rather than individuals. So I think you focus on the individual students, but what I really wanted to speak about was Dr. Huntley, when you mentioned today the logo or the Indian head, that, as we all know, it was on every nickel years ago. And I know about the Redskins, you probably do too. It was done in honor of one of their former players who's no longer being honored. Maybe Redskins is offensive to some people, but if we have one commissioner, and I don't care how many, who start to complain or try to, I don't know if it's woke or just wants to change things, my wife and I are personally responsible, and we funded the carving that's down on the lake there that has the Indians and Robert Rogers. When I semi-retired, I became an amateur historian. I did some archaeology digs, and we contacted a carver we know, Oregon, and 3 Indian tribes actually came and consulted with us about the clothing, the type of image they should have, and they were extremely proud. If you recall, it took them 5 months to carve that up on Route 9, and they stopped by on several occasions, and they were honored and very thankful that it was being done. Now, with respect to that, it would seem to me that I would like to know who, besides some commissioner, who may be complaining. I don't know of any Indigenous or American Indian people who would complain about this honor that is bestowed here. Because remember, this is the area of French-Indian War. It's been around for 70 years. And I know many children and students and athletes really respect that image, and so do many parents. So please think long and hard and share with us, the public. If you start receiving tons of letters, I think you could receive tons of letters of support as well. And if they threaten litigation, I have no idea what Cambridge is about, but perhaps it's more serious or more involved. I hope we don't buckle under just someone's political pressure that they want to change our community. This is a very different community. It's a very good, solid community, and it's historical. I don't think it should just be wished away because someone wants it to go. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rod. Last on our list is Jeremy Dewars.
Well, just a quick question about the superintendent search. When is that becoming public? And I know you can't answer, but if you could just let us know. I know that the search is confidential at first during that early hiring process, but if you could perhaps let the community know when it does become public, those candidates. And I understand the difficulty now with the deficit of administrators going into the field. As part of the administrator search out in Granville, and I thought the stack of applicants would be much larger, but not many people are to either the education field or running schools. So if you could just, just inform us, or maybe a roundabout date when, as to when it's going to be public.
Thanks so much. Was there anyone who did not sign up who had a comment that has to do with something on the agenda? All right, thanks. We're going to move on to our school, our board comments. That's right. We moved board comments here. So in case there was anything that was said that we needed to discuss at the table here regarding anything that's happened thus far in the meeting. And did anybody have any comments?
I just have to say something because it's just something I feel in the moment, how proud I am of not only this board, but our community. All around us across the country, we see examples of contentious, angry, nasty board meetings. And our community and our board, I think, should serve as an example of how things should be done. And I wanted to thank you guys, because whether or not we agree with each other or not, you've always been polite. You came up with good ideas, and we listened to that, and we've made redirections at times because of that. So I wanted to thank this community and thank our board for all the hard work that we put in to make sure that that happens. So.
Did you have anything? Were you leaning forward because you had something to say? Okay. I wanted to just mention that there's been an awful lot of articles and guidance and so forth that has come through educationally around Native American imagery. And I'd like to have a conversation at some point about how we can make that more available to our public, since this is a topic of our times. Thanks. All right. Okay, very good. Next up, we have our school business consent agenda.
So under consent agenda, I have a recommendation to the Board of Education on consent agenda. The items that we did revise the agenda just a little bit this time around. Under consent, you'll find minutes and special Committee on Special Education Action, Treasurer's Report, claims. A lot of those rather routine items are listed there, and it's a good place to put those items under consent agenda so you don't have to act on every single one of those. So I will, along with policy and the last one, of course, is the retreat that Lynn already spoke about. So as recommended by the superintendent, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Lake George Central School District hereby approves the school business consent agenda items A through H.
All right, Mary Ann second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried.
So the next item that I have is the State Environmental Quality Review Act. It's this called the SEEKR. What this is it's a long resolution. I won't read it all. It's actually a negative declaration. Districts that enter into a capital project typically have to do what is called the State Environmental Quality Review, which means that they would look at environmental issues associated with the project. It might be water, it might be historical, it might be a number of different things. In this case, the project that we're embarking upon does not require such a review, but it does require Board of Education action not to do the review. And I just want to explain this one briefly, and I know that Lynn already went over this at one point, so I will be very brief. But this is the American Recovery Plan, the federal dollars that flow through two school districts throughout the country, and these American Recovery Plan dollars can go to a very limited number of items in a school district. We're choosing, as you know and we reported before, to use a good amount of these dollars, $1.4 million, to improve air quality in both of our schools. The elementary school, for example, currently has the Univent system that was originally placed there when the building was built. And it's time for replacement for a couple of reasons. One is air quality, to improve air quality, and the other is noise. So that's part of this project. In addition, we'll be replacing air conditioning in the elementary school as well. At the high school, we'll be doing the same thing. The univents that are in this building have aged. It's hard to find parts for those univents that currently exist. It's hard to keep them up and running, so we'll replace as many of those as we can, dollars that are available. In addition, in the high school, we'll start to provide some air conditioning in selected classrooms. Mr. Kokoza has already identified those classrooms. You can imagine which ones they are. They start way up on top in the third floor. And then the math classrooms are notoriously hot, warm in the warmer seasons. And we'll continue to provide some air conditioning for those kind of spaces in this building. So that's $1.4 million, as I mentioned. And is there anything else that I? Here. The next item that I have is the Board of Education a recommendation. Now, did I do the action on? I didn't
No,
do the action
I
on
was going to
that.
say, you need to recommend it.
That was quick. So as recommended by the superintendent, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Lake George Central School District approves the following resolution. I'll read the last, I won't read the whole resolution, I'll just read the last line. Now therefore be it resolved that the board finds and concludes that the proposed action is a type 2 action within the meaning of the commissioner's regulations, and therefore is not subject to review under seeker and the regulations thereunder.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried.
Next item that thank you. The next item that I have is the advocacy priorities. As the board is aware, I'm assuming that you're aware, the 31 component school districts in the Washington, Saratoga, Warren, Hamilton, Essex, BOCES come together throughout the course of the year and develop advocacy priorities. This BOCES is one of the few BOCES in the entire state that has an advocacy committee of this nature. They're very active, they're very involved, they spend a good amount of time developing advocacy priorities, and they spend an awful lot of time, a good amount of time advocating, going to Albany and sorts of advocacy tasks. So there are 3 advocacy items that I'm proposing for you based upon the recommendations from the advocacy committee. First is to fund and adjust the foundation formula. What that means is that we would include a due minimum increase for all school districts in the state, actually, that every district would receive a due minimum increase regardless of the foundation aid phase-in level. In addition, we want to maintain the save harmless provision that's currently in the foundation aid funding formula, which benefits Lake George specifically and other school districts that are experiencing declining enrollment, because the aid formula is based on enrollment. If enrollment is going down, aid goes down. Save harmless prevents the aid from going down. It allows stability of state aid to districts with a declining enrollment. The second advocacy priority is to increase the threshold for BOCES aid for career and technical education services, specifically teachers. $30,000 limit on the amount of aid that school districts receive from BOCES reimbursement. And that $30,000 limit was established decades ago when teachers' salaries averaged around $30,000. Now they don't average around $30,000. They're over double that in terms of average career and technical education teacher salaries. So what we're proposing is that we would receive 100% aidability on salaries for career and technical education teachers. The third item is building aid for small capital projects. Currently, there's a capital outlay line item in the budget, and the capital outlay line item can be as high as, but can't exceed $100,000, which means that a school district can have a $100,000 capital project occur on an annual basis in the school district and receive aid the following year, immediately the following year, as opposed to a typical aid reimbursement program that covers 15 years or 20 years. So it's a real benefit to the district to always have a capital outlay project as a line item in the budget. Spend the $100,000 on needed improvements, and you receive the aid the following year. Well, that figure of $100,000 was established many, many years, decades ago, actually. So we're proposing that the aid be increased from $100,000 to $250,000, and so that it can be used in the same way that I just described for the 100. So those are the 3 advocacy priorities that the advocacy committee is recommending, and what I recommend to the board.
Tricia, can I just say?
Sure.
Also, these priorities right in alignment with the state school board's election. So, which is incredibly strong.
Thanks. Do you want to go ahead? Do you want
Yeah, I'll do that.
to? Keep talking, Doug.
As you'd think I haven't done this before. As recommended by the superintendent, be it resolved that the Board of Education of Lake George Central School District hereby approves the following resolution. I just described all of those priorities there, and they're listed there.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried.
Next item that I have is a football merger, and let me just comment quickly. I couldn't be prouder or happier that for this school district community, the people that were involved in the forums, the parents, community, players, and the Board of Education for coming together. I assure you, if you had not come together, this merger would not be taking place. Warrensburg had to hear that everyone was supportive of this merger before they would even consider it. So I couldn't be prouder, and this is one of those really satisfying moments for, I think, a Board of Education community, especially the superintendent of schools and administrators, to see the community come together, take action collectively, and have an immediate positive impact on kids, and that's what this resolution will do. So as recommended by the superintendent, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Lake George Central School District hereby authorizes the administration to take action to submit an application to Section 2, New York State Public High School Athletic Association for the express purpose of combining or merging of students from the Lake George Central School District, Warrensburg, Bolton, North Warren Central School Districts, form a singular varsity football, junior varsity football, and modified football team for the 2022-2023 football season.
Second on that one.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried.
I just have to say something because your modesty is just amazing because we tried really hard to get this Warrensburg initially because it made the most sense. And it was you and your finesse, Dr. Huntley, and you really worked it and you made this happen for us. And I want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next up, we have faculty staff resignation consent agenda.
As recommended by the superintendent, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Lake George Central School District hereby approves the faculty staff resignation consent agenda items for Dara Orofsky and Cody Stinson.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried.
As recommended by the superintendent, be it resolved that the Board of Education of Lake George Central School District hereby approves the faculty staff consent appointments, items A through D, and that's Michael Grant as bus driver trainee, Dara, I have trouble with that name, I'm sorry, Orofsky, to the probationary appointment of teacher aide, and Margaret Nelson to a 4-year probationary appointment as a teaching assistant.
Mary Ann made the motion and Lynn second. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried, and welcome aboard. I believe next up we have our next public comment period 2. And Linda Clark, do you have some to add? Welcome. Same parameters apply.
Dr. Huntley, much of this is going to go to you. At our informal meeting the other day, we discussed the optional DEI policy. At that meeting, we discovered, well, actually, around that time of the meeting, we all became aware that there would be state funding linked to implementing a DEI policy. At the meeting, you had mentioned that we would get points towards that money. And I don't understand what that means. I also, I'm going to ask that when we go further into this, that we have an explanation of how that money will connect to what we're doing. What is the point system, if there is one, and what would be the state's expectation for a DEI policy in order for the district to get money? Okay. It is my concern that the state is going to move the bar regarding how far we go into the DEI policy. And I fear that the point system or the requirement system for the money will take away the local interpretation and implementation of the policy and require a state interpretation and implementation for that money. We could look into that. I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks so much. Next up, we have Chad York.
Good evening, everybody. Just want to say thank you for your help and tenaciousness with the football merger. I appreciate it. I know it was hard, tough sledding. A lot of people were involved, and I think it's going to be, like we talked about, mutually beneficial throughout Section 2. I mean, more so ever than our two communities and schools coming together. I think it's going to be great. And secondly, I thought about it after Rod brought it up. The Warrior Head, are we going to take... Is there going to be any more further action on limiting the use of the Warrior Head? Are we going to take Dr. Huntley's advice and pause on backing away from that? Is it going to be reinstituted into the uniforms, the letterhead, the scoreboards, or are we going to continue to phase it away? Thanks.
And I can just make a quick response that right now, it's not a priority item to go further. The district has been charged with, considering that, but it's not a priority item right now. So everything remains the same at the moment. And also, the board doesn't have any plans to put it onto the agenda. So we're really seeing what the state is directing. Go ahead.
Is it time to comment on those? Or?
Well, if you have a quick comment after each one, you can, but we can also have dialogue afterwards if we want to.
Sure, whatever you.
The board.
I just wanted to address one of them. Make sure it was clear tonight. Whenever you wish is fine.
Go ahead.
So on the Indian Head, the Native American mascot, my thought was we would do no more, no less. We would continue to do what we're doing with the Native American mascot for the time being, without, as President said, without any plans in the immediate future. And Linda, I'm pretty good. It's pretty easy for me to confuse people, so I know I confused you on the points. So I don't. I learned on Tuesday of last week, 1 week ago today, that there was money tied. That there's money available for. Yeah, it's all brand new. So I don't have any other information than that there is money. And my comment on the points was in reference to what the state has done in the past. Remember APPR. Remember APPR? So those districts that had APPR done were able to apply for grants. And when they applied for the grants, the APPR meant that you were able to accumulate a certain number of points of a total points in order to submit your grant. So that's all that I was referring to. I knew in the past that there was a point system, but I know nothing about DEI. I don't think there's anything out for anybody to know. So Sure, absolutely. That's a, yeah, yeah. Absolutely.
Thanks. Amanda Dewars? Thank you. And Rod Cornelius, I believe, has left. He was the last person on. Is there anyone else who, yes, come on up, Mike.
I just wanted to make a quick request. When I reviewed that document in regards to the football merger today, in that attachment was personal information and phone numbers of parents, of players. And I just wanted to ensure that it was removed before it became part of a public record. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else? All right, we're going to our next comment. Does anyone have anything else they want to bring up to the board? I wanted to bring up the idea of the January meeting and just put in our head, folks will be gathering for the holidays. COVID is still present, and I'm actually not sure where we stand. I believe it's early January that we have the permission to have virtual meetings until, so it may be right around our meeting time. I don't know if that is going to be renewed, but I just want us to stay diligent and honest with each other. We have three options. One would be to have a meeting just like this where we invite the public. Another would be a total virtual meeting. Another would be us present and the public would be virtual. So keep that in mind as we go forward. We'll make that decision closer to the time, and safety first. Did you have a comment, Doug? You're okay. Very good. Well, I would also just like to wish everyone a blessed, safe, and wondrous holiday season. And thank you all for being here. We really enjoy the community involvement, and board members, thank you all. And can we get a motion? Oops, what'd you say? Oh, motion to adjourn? So moved. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried.